Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And guys, we've got a difficult, annoying game to talk about, don't we? A really, I think on the balance of things, a really frustrating result. Sorry that we're coming to you from a bit of a different location, a little bit of a more low budget setup, and we're looking a little bit different, but thank you very much for tuning in to another video. As I always say, if you haven't done it already, please hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications on, and you'll be the first and fastest to all of my Brighton and Hove Albion content. Now, look, I think on the balance of play, we probably all walk away from that game last night. I remember speaking to mates on the concourse after the game. It's an incredibly frustrating result, mainly because of the fact that Brighton, for the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, looked very good. And, you know, as soon as you go 2-0 up in a game, you obviously don't expect to lose 3-2. And you don't expect to then concede, you don't expect to lose 4-3. And you don't expect to then go, 3-2 down, 4-2 down, 4-3. And I think it was just the manner of the capitulation, wasn't it? It was the fact that we were able to change on a knife edge so quickly. I think to be honest, overall, if we're speaking around the difference in quality, I saw Jack Albion make this point on Twitter last night, and I think it's a fair point to make, that actually you talk about the difference in qualities between Brighton and Aston Villa. You look at the options they're able to bring off the bench. I don't necessarily think this player is unbelievable. Right? They've got players like Jadon Sancho on the bench, obviously Marlon on the bench. They've got real depth, which I think Brighton probably are operating at a slightly lower level in terms of quality. So I don't think there's any shame in the fact that Villa were able to turn up the gears a little bit and get a really good away win. But I think from a Brighton perspective, it was, there was an element of collapse to it, wasn't there? There was, I think while Dunk and Van Hecke particularly, obviously scoring 2 goals, both looked okay. I actually think in the first half we saw it, but mainly in the second half, Brighton were cut through pretty easily. And yes, we can say it was the defenders, it was the keeper. I actually don't think you can necessarily apportion blame completely on them or really on them at all. I think the midfield looked very lightweight, particularly in that second half. It looked like we were able to be cut through very easily. While I believe that someone like Carlos Baleba actually had a very good game, encouragingly one of his best performances this season. I actually think, you look at that second half and I think just the way we were played through was very easily. We saw it in the first half, didn't we? Obviously, with Ollie Watkins going on and getting those 2 goals, there was a sign before he got that first goal in the first half where he was slipped in behind. It was too easy, really, the ball that was just played completely through our midfield. In the end, it was a pretty tame finish, but it was a simple ball that got him in behind. Verbruggen easily kind of handled it. And I think really, yes, we ended up kind of conceding from set pieces and we collapsed in that sense. But actually, I think for a lot of that second half and even in the first half, there were signs that Villa were able to cut through us. I think if you want to talk about positives, I think there were a few positives. I think while Stefano Simos obviously going off with that injury is a real blow, I think the way he started the game looked really bright. He's obviously integral to Brighton's kind of pressing side and the way they play, isn't it? Welbeck is clearly the best at that in terms of centre forwards, but I think in terms of what we were seeing coming in, trying to rest Welbeck, which I think was the right decision in this game, Seamus did a very good job in kind of repeating that role. And actually in that first 20 minutes, we were excellent. The pressing that we were showing was absolutely brilliant. Yes, we maybe got a couple of lucky goals. The Jack Hinshaw taking deflection, the first one from JP Van Hecke, was it a goal, was it not? I've actually not even seen it back, but I've seen some tweets, people saying that maybe Brighton were a little bit lucky to get given that goal. It was a bit scrappy. But actually, in terms of the way we were playing, the way we were being so physical, chasing balls down, Minteh working his socks off, kadioglu and Cuyper being electric on the left-hand side, Baleba, back to his old self, nipping in, zipping in, getting his body in front of things, being really quick to winning the ball back. There were many positives. And it's just a shame that we weren't able to keep that up. And I think, I spoke about Seamus there. I thought the way he pressed was brilliant. The concern is with that injury is the fact that it just does look like an injury where, it feels to me like a bad one, doesn't it? If we've all seen those ones before when a player goes down off the ball, or he was kind of chasing the ball down and did that thing where you kind of turn back on yourself to chase the ball, and he could see the twist in the knee. Hopefully, it is maybe just some kind of there's just going to be a bit of bruising there, a bit of aggravation. Let's hope. My concern was that it did look like the kind of thing you do when you do an ACL. Maybe the only kind of saving grace would be the fact that he didn't, he was able to walk off the pitch. I think that's probably one of the main positives you can say about this. He was able to walk off the pitch. But yeah, it wasn't the best sign. What else have I written here? So I've heard we from Belabor. They had some good moments, but I think collectively, in that second half we did see a lot of slip ups. I think in terms of the Ollie Watkins goal that made it 2-1, I think Weaver did get done there. I think it was quite poor defending, and I think on a couple of occasions, whilst Weaver, we've seen in recent weeks very good performances from Weaver, and we've seen improvements in the way he's playing and the quality which he's playing with. I do think in this game we saw him found out a little bit in 1v1 moments. I think 2 goals for Brighton, he was maybe not at fault, but I think he certainly could have done better. I think that first Watkins one, was that the one where I think that was one where it went across the face of goal and Watkins kind of bundled it in. I remember looking at that moments before. Pau Torres takes the ball from the defence, steps into midfield and pushes up, and Brighton just aren't pressing him. No one's chasing the ball. They're kind of letting him have possession. Then in the end, a couple of little cute passes, he ends up passing it out wide, and Villa are in. And it felt like it was so avoidable from that sense. Brighton had been such a good high pressing side all of the game. And then when it came to a really key moment, they did just allow Pau Torres to have loads of space, pick his pass out. Villa then get in behind us, and it's quite simple. So yeah, I think, we started the game well, and I think obviously that plan A just was derailed by the CMAS injury. I think one of the questions we got to ask is, was the right substitution made? What would you have done in that moment? I think for me, I think I would have made the same substitution that Fabian Hurzeler made. I don't know whether I necessarily would have brought Jack Hinshelwood on, but I think I do agree with the fact that he didn't bring on Welbeck, or he didn't bring on Costellas. I think the whole point of trying to rest Welbeck is that you rest him, and you end up, even in that situation, you try and bring him on in, with 30 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go, which he ended up doing. Maybe you bring on Costellas. I think that's maybe one of the arguments you can make, and I think that's probably fair enough. If it were me, I think I would have still, brought on a midfielder, maybe tried to do something a little bit different. I would have almost played Hinshelwood as a false 9 instead of Brian Gruda. I know Brian Gruda was I've seen him being criticised a little bit for that role, but I actually thought for the most part, Brian Gruda in his first start in a while after injury actually had a very good game. I thought we saw, energy from him. We saw the high pressing, we saw intensity, we saw quality on the ball, we saw the close control, linking up with attackers really, really nicely. Obviously, there was that brilliant ball where he slid Hinshelwood in. There were excellent moments. But I think in the second half, as we were trying to become a bit more resolute, and obviously we conceded that 1 goal, and we were trying to have a bit of an outlet and kind of play the game a little bit better, I think Brighton probably did need that Welbeck influence maybe a little bit earlier, maybe 10, 15 minutes earlier. There was a moment in the second half, I saw Gruda, down towards the north stand trying to hold a ball up, and it just wasn't really working. That's not really his game. I think when Welbeck came on, we looked like we had a bit more structure. Obviously, he got unlucky with that header that was saved right at the end. But maybe, I agree with the fact we can't play him every game. And I think when you got midweek, he's 35 years old, he's in form. I think you want to try and limit his minutes. That's completely understandable. But yeah, maybe we could have done something different there. I don't know. I think also it's worth saying that I think Verbruggen does deserve a shout out. I thought he actually, despite conceding 4 goals, he was probably one of Brighton's better performers. There was a good moment where he kind of prevented a dunk own goal and denied Guesan, was it, from quite close. Just before that 4th goal went in, kept Watkins out on a few occasions in those 1v1 moments. So actually, I think the scoreline could have been a lot worse without him. On the flip side, when you're seeing Villa and their keeper, they probably, could have. They probably could have saved a few more goals if Emi Martinez was in goal, let's be honest. And I think maybe Brighton should have made better use of that. So yeah, I think, look, Brighton did find ways to hurt Villa, and we saw that in the first half. I think it was a good performance. I think it was a collapse. We bottled it. There's no doubt about it. It was a screw up in that sense. And it's unbelievably frustrating because if we hadn't conceded that silly set piece at the end to make it 4-3, actually, it's a 3-3 draw. It's an entertaining game. on the balance of things, it's probably fair. I think Brighton did deserve a draw. Did they deserve to win it in the end due to the collapse? No, of course they didn't. But did they deserve to lose it? I mean, they have lost it, but did they, would they have deserved to draw? Yeah, I think they would have. I think they were good value for a draw. And they had a really strong spell late on where they could have got that equaliser. And it just feels like if we just hadn't conceded that silly set piece at the end, things would have been very, very different. So look, we go into the next game on the weekend, West Ham. I think Brighton, despite this result, actually will have a fair bit of confidence. We've been in a good run. We played pretty well for large moments in this game. It's not like we were really, really poor. And got completely done by Villa, or we weren't very. There were moments where we were good. We were able to create chances. Maybe the kind of attacking start to the game papered over some cracks in terms of lacking in control, lacking in composure, lacking in having that tempo for the full game. And I think it goes back to that thing for Brighton, which is, are we a 90-minute side, or are we just a second half side or a first half side, or can we only do it for 20, 30 minutes? I think that is one of the problems that in the long term this Brighton side needs to deal with. But we move on. Good performances from Baleba, Duncan Van Hecke decent, Van Hecke getting 2 goals, Hinshaw looking bright and sparky, Gruda looking okay. Did I say Baleba looked okay? Let's hope that Seamas's wasn't too bad. We obviously had Cuyper and Kadioglu. I thought, again, everyone was pretty okay, and Minteh worked his socks off as usual. So, we move on. It was a collapse. It wasn't great, but we move on. Let me know what you thought. Were you at the game? What did you think? How did you feel when it ended? Were you absolutely gutted? Did you feel like Brighton deserved more? Do you feel like the ref was a little bit dodgy? No, I don't think the ref had the best game. I think he gave a lot of decisions which probably should have gone to Brighton. There were a couple of goal kicks he gave to Villa, which I think were corners, gave the wrong result for a throw-in. I think things could have been different. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Were Brighton good enough value for the draw, or do you think they deserved to lose? Let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll be